Hey everybody. So I want to go about this a little bit different today. We're going to still do lyrical lessons, but what I want to talk about is the literal transformation and what happens when you apply knowledge of self and the refining that happens with that, the internal battles that happen with that, to choose what you refine, what serves you and what doesn't, the understanding that you need changes, the DNA explosions that happen. Transformation isn't always pretty. Healing isn't always pretty, but the outcome is. But you have to allow yourself that process, So we're going to go through that process really quick in a few clips because this particular person expressed their process subconsciously during a 7-year transformation. Now, we're going to also talk about at the end different methods that she could have utilized that I utilize with her now that would have sped up that transformational process from 7 years to 1 year or 6 months. 6 months. Because in one, I'm going to show you what kind of conversations we have during these methods with just 5 minutes, right? But let's get right to it, because I know you guys got things to do, right? So let's talk about what it looked like in the beginning. How did she come out the box? What her content look like? Let's listen.
He get ran up on by a nigga in a beater and hush puppies. Niggas that silence dogs, hush puppies. Get your bread ball to flame to your sinner. That's a hush puppy. I'm about to sit this nigga down. Sandbars.
Okay, so that gives you a lot about the environment and the identity of the individual and her surroundings, and if she's absorbed to where in war, this is her form of swords, her chosen swords. So what happens when a person like that starts to ask questions like this?
How do I honor my ancestors?
All right now.
See, I was just another black girl growing up Christian in America. And I don't mean I just claim that. I mean Bible in my backpack. Growing up in churches but nowhere near perfect. Still with tears in eyes, waving by to friends in hearses. Street pharmacists with my quick sticks, giving them commissions to what they've dispersing. Then sat with gangsters and traded verses. So yeah, nowhere near perfect.
Come right now.
But even dealing with cons and more, truth was still in me for this carnivore, because I still felt tapped into something and yearned for more. Just to notice conflictions and inscriptions in a Messiah's beautiful description, not implemented in printed pictures. Thinking who's controlling these visions and why are we even Christians? In time, one of the many tools used for black people's divisions is religion. Plus, Jesus wasn't. He was a Hebrew Jew whose names they don't say in texts that predate the letter J. So to whom do I pray? Many questions that wouldn't get answered by ministers of blatant potent potions and clouds men have stirred. Who were we before the migrated Africans were colonized, or some were dragged on chains and stripped of any call to mother's land and eyes? What left for dead culture was ate away by these cultural vultures, and how do I honor my ancestors?
All right.
Right? So when you start to dig deep and go backwards in order to go forward, when you start to be introspective, when you start to observe the world with new knowledge and really try to understand from a spiritual aspect, from a historical aspect, and all of those things start to change inside. Thoughts move molecules. Transformation, alchemy begins to happen. But it's a struggle. It's a struggle because depending on the environment, depending on the other mindsets around you, depending on the music that you consume, right? So what first happens with a lot of people is you have a DNA explosion. In the midst of having a DNA explosion, it releases some of your ancestor trauma. What is ancestor trauma? First off, if you don't know it, Some people may not. As you reincarnate, I call it incarnation. That's what it is, coming to be in human form and having a suit to wear for this experience. Your data holds information from other generations. That's science, right? So with that data, you can access that data. It's most of the time it comes out subconsciously, but your ancestors live in and through you. So when you feel that anger or that pain, when you see certain things, that's because your ancestors remember. So you remember. And you want to ride for it. I mean, you have house niggas and you have fields, you know? And you got to think of even the slave trade, because you have different people that are here. There are people that are of the ancestry of people who migrated here. You have the ancestry of people who are from Europe. Africans that dealt with the royalty in Europe and came here. And then you have people who were stolen. Like my ancestors. My ancestors were stolen. We know exactly where the plantation was that we ran away from. I am from the ancestry of the runaway slaves. Now, if you do your history, most of the stolen slaves were slaves that were captured within the midst of war, in civil wars going on in Africa, because they did come over there and snatch up who they could snatch up, but it was easier to make deals with Africans. So that's why we'll talk about another time of how your DNA, the data in your DNA shows you who your ancestors were based on your surroundings, based on what you're naturally drawn to, and the people that naturally open up their arms to you. All of my entire life, I have been open arms. I've always had open arms, or people have always pulled me in, or in any walk or any room of my life that were either priestesses and priests, or the warriors, or the warrior priests and priestesses. So I know that's who I am, or it wouldn't be automatic. You know what I mean? So I know that. I know I'm of that. I wouldn't have generations of preachers in my family. I wouldn't have great aunties I was doing voodoo and all of that. Like, we was witch doctors. What? Warrior witch doctors. Like, I already know. But we're going to fast forward now and talk about and show what that can look like if somebody is having trauma triggers, ancestral trauma triggers. All right, listen to this.
That held long medals with a hole where fire spit, and she watched as her father fought until that loud fire lit and his chest was hitting red splash, giving his lips their last kiss. Then her mother's head went, giving that last glare of a stare that said, "You better grip those lips and you better not move, girl." Then a child silently watched her mother ship to a new world where her dignity and strength was stripped because monsters thought it was cheaper to breed her. And now her new husband has to hold back his pride and cries and help wipe her eyes because Massa made her his new surrogate, and he had to watch as her belly grew, knowing what she's carrying, while the stitches still dripping from the backlashes from being caught from teaching his heritage. Now modern day slaves have the audacity to deny their heritage with arrogance, as if ashamed of the ancestry we've inherited. So today, I ask that we take pride.
Let her work.
I have to accept it, but I do not respect it. I'm disappointed. So my pupil, focus where your pupils are pointed. Stare into the eyes of the mother of men and let your soul bow, my Asian baby. As you stare into the eyes of the mother of man, my Asian baby, as you feel centuries of tears of pain, watching cultures tainted in mental and spiritual enslavements in my daughters and sisters
raped and my children snatched across oceans on slave ships and less than half making it half naked, laying in their own waste and waiting to get auctioned off like cattle and some ripped limb from limb for examples.
Right? So you go from that, right? And then listen to this. Because now it's showing the time frames. You can go through triggers of ancestral explosions of your DNA, and it'll take through timelines of your ancestors, right? Like this person went through a time like tornado of memory and emotion from those memories, and to the point she had to express it. So listen to this.
But there's a great barrier between the black man, woman, and the African born of the motherland. Due to a plan to divide and conquer in order to strip us of our honor. You see, the black man and woman of this nation went through a mental training for enslavement. And the African went through a training to stay away from them. They were told that we are lazy. We marched with Martin through stabs and beatings and our human rights being treated like beliefs of treason. We broke barriers between religions and pigments, and we flexed with X until one of our own blew out his chest. Then the Black Panthers had to rise to protect and serve in a time that seemed like a purge. They had to fight those sworn in because they were the ones sliding the swords in. They built organizations to help the communities move more fruitfully until even their organization was infiltrated, except for LA.
All right now.
LA said they'd rather save this day and on a grave than... LA said they'd rather save a day and on a grave and got the licked and empty and like it was the end of the training day. See, we're lazy? No.
But when allowing that process, you will always, if you allow the complete process, you will be able to have understanding in your warrior spirit still, but find a place of peace. Find a point of, okay, that happened. Where are we at now? That happened. How do we work together so it doesn't continue to happen? Now that we through the pain, where are we now? And you hear things like this.
More than what's been confused of us. And I see a day where we bridge the gaps between religions and regions, and we evolve for the betterment of our people. I see a day where we understand the reality that was created and the power we hold to change it. I see a day when the African visits and we are so well represented, they see us as ancestors. I see a day we learn to love ourselves. And until that day, I say to you all, you are wonderful, mystical, beautifully divine people. And I love you all. Ashe. Thank you for having me.
But during this process, your life doesn't just change like that. You know, it's a process. So what you're doing on a regular basis still looks like that. You're still in these programs and these setups and battlefields. So you get caught up with caring about what others think. And even presenting what you're learning and what you know to be true in ways to where it'll be consumed by others. You're thinking about that in the process. You know, even though all you really want to talk about is healing now, you can't even give healing without there being war. It's hard to give healing, even though that's what you know the people need. You see the environment, but it still has to come through in a certain way in the battlefield, right? And in this particular clip, she said it best. And then the next clip, you see how she had to do it without saying it. But that's what's happening. Take a look.
Bars for the third. Know something happening? Yeah. So look, I saved my few gun bars for the third. And ironically, this is my healing round. So pay attention to every shot I insert in him. Because you can't heal a person without hurting them. See, we both ill. But test and time reflects if I peel, side effects. So when they loop us, your energy hindering. But this thing leave veggies and eat different. Bah! Now it's lack of knowledge spread. The streets ignorant.
What?
So now it's E everywhere. We raising pharmacists. Bah! Now they living life off what people think. We raising narcissists. And it hardens when you talk to people who don't talk back. In ideology, we gonna get back to raising hands that press points and move organs, reflexology. I run up behind you deep like an entourage. Just to have you under my feet when I feel that pressure like a Thai massage. This is a fight, like this is a fight to life or death, and I got no hands and you made me. But I still lay them bodies out for the dough, no Reiki. For years, I sat staring from heights until it all started looking fishy as I cleared up aquarium site, archetype and Aryan fights. I birthed the child and held her friends and his dying lines. I've carried a life. But I sat and I felt the pains of man. Then your heart summoned me as I was thinking of saving one. Because you couldn't call yourself God without facing one.
Shit.
Your shade of clay. I'm talking about being of the people that gave this world their knowledge of astronomy, astrology, philosophy, spirituality, mathematics, and more galore. I'm talking about being of the land that molds gold, diamonds, the rarest of crystal healing stones, indestructible metals, the rarest exotic of petals. I'm talking about that land that they still drain oil from to this day. But for some reason, we still hide our coils that reach for the sky and suck in the sun's minerals, and I mean that literal, as they coil in to feed us, even down to feed our fetus, that's igniting the light that breathes more life in us. Transitioning, hurting me, but this heart they call hollow still urged to love this imperfect person perfectly. So I had to reach back at the hand that reached back at me. So I embodied in studies thousands of years past common religions to the spiritual beliefs and rituals and indigenous to quantum and metaphysics to the existence of the multiverse and dimensions to my ancestry, digging deep in the lineage for the meaning that's trying to find the strength in my bloodline's inheritance to sitting with a psychotherapist trying to heal my idiosyncrasies causing me lower frequencies. That's a mind coping with cave ways to floating alpha theta brain waves to the elevation from the medication of meditation that strengthened my psychic sense and see. Clairvoyance took my mind's eye on a voyage. For years, I sat staring from heights until it all started looking fishy as I cleared up aquarium site, archetype and Aryan fights. I birthed the child and held her friends and his dying lines. I've carried a life. But I sat and I felt the pains of man, then your heart summoned me as I was thinking of saving one. Because you couldn't call yourself God without facing one.
Shit.
Your She who devours seeds and breeds trees that give you life. I am not just your lover or wife. I am your first teacher, preacher, healer of all your conditions, your nutritionist. She who pushes your mental, spiritual, and physical conditioning. I am woman.
Go ahead, Queen.
Right? I am not just your nurturer or bringer of life. I am the wrath that'll take it too. I am not just your incubator. I am the balance of the splitting image of your creator.
Go.
I am woman, but you can call me queen. To my roots youth, that's modesty, but I'm just honestly documenting my odyssey. See, I am woman of African descent. I am the neck that holds heads like Malcolm X. I am the spine named after Coretta Scott. That is the strength behind kings that walk towards dreams. I am the love of a set that gathered who was left the cocaine after death and then put the words of power behind his name. So even in the afterlife he reigned. I am
More to, you know how with the Bible, it's different stories, you know, when you look at those parables to learn from those stories. Well, we're taught how to make our own parables. That's the main difference with spirituality and religion. You're not within certain margins, but you are within certain principles. And you learn to operate as your godly self and to look at things as messages as you walk down the street. And you receive and you self-evaluate and you learn to move as nature does. And you learn the principles of nature because nature flows as a representation of the physical source, like God is nature. And you see what I'm saying? So when you have that and you see that transformation of coming to a inner fight, a struggle, the mud, you know, to sitting on top of a mountain and looking down, and not in a way with your nose up, because I'm not for that. People look at their nose up to me right now because I talk about transformation, because I'm talking about times where I have been in the mud, because those are the kind of stories that inspire me out of it. So I'm not going to be ashamed of my struggles and things that I went through, because what if that person, those people that inspire me were afraid of theirs because they thought that they were going to be putting low energy on themselves by even talking about a struggle. Oh my God, I'm supposed to be so far from that. Fuck that. The people that come to me want that realness, want that authenticity, want that truth. That's inspiring for them. Because if you come into my space, you resonate with my frequency, and that's what was inspiring to me. Because it's only gonna get better. Every day I get to do the things that I love and live from that. And it was a process. So let's talk about that, right? So how can this process be faster for you? I'll give you a small, tiny bit of an example of my coaching sessions and how that looks for even this particular client. Was your first client, your first session will be with yourself. My first client was me, right? So the first thing that I would look at with her, I'm only going to give you a few things. I'm not about to give you all the business, right? Of a complete chart, all right? You don't need to know me like that. You were just saying me true. Yeah. But we're going to take steps, okay? So just look at this person's human design, right? She has the abstraction channel. So the abstraction channel makes you play back old memories over and over and over again. You see the visuals of memories a lot, right? But every time you see it with a different outcome. Because you start to play around with the dots. You start to play around with the patterns that you remember. It makes sense and clarity out of it. Not to make your own decisions, but as a part of your understanding in life, to give wisdom for others. So that when other people come to you to talk about things, you have looked at every single aspect and different perspectives of situations that you can give good advice. That's the abstraction channel that exists in the energy, one of the energy channels that this person naturally comes with. Does everybody have the abstraction channel? No, but you have channels that you don't know that you naturally have and you bring to situations. So that person is good, and part of their creative process is seeing all these different perspectives, playing all these memories, feeling the emotion of it, connecting the dots. And then she's a projector. So projectors take in information differently than a generator or a manifester or something like that, because they're absorbing energy in a space to help guide it towards purpose and allow everybody to reach the best and higher versions of themselves. But if they're feeling all the information, they're feeling the metaphysical information in ways that they can't even verbalize and communicate, you know, it can come out in other ways, like creativity. Especially when it becomes visual. It's visual in experiencing it in its wholeness. So this person also has the right angle incarnation cross of love. So that means that they're at their best surrounded by love, giving love. And then in her battles, what hit the hardest? What did people feel the most when she was talking about spirituality, when she was talking about love, when she was talking about godliness, when she was pushing things that people were not talking about in that space, because that's her authenticity. But it also meant it's going against her natural nature to always only be showing it in the midst of war and tearing someone down, when her incarnation and purpose is about love. So that means that she needs to be utilizing her gift in other ways, her writing in other ways, her advice, her natural gift to give advice in other ways, to where it's a peaceful and loving environment. I'm going to give you two more things. In her astrology chart, 9th house, which is the higher mind, the consciousness, the philosophy, and all of that. She has two placements there. Her Jupiter, which is what you expand on, your money, your abundance, your luck, and just what you expand on within other people's lives and within yourself. In Gemini. And her midhaven is in the 9th house in Gemini. What does that mean? Gemini is all about communication and having multiple perspectives or options. So your midhaven is all about your career. So when it comes to career and when it comes to abundance, it's to do with the higher mind, expanding consciousness and communicating in whichever way that is, and communicating and touching different perspectives. She was already doing that subconsciously, but not at her best, because she was doing it within a box that goes against part of her design. While continuously absorbing and feeling the energies of competition and war, when that's not natural for her design. In her design, she doesn't even have the center defined of having something to prove. She lives life not having nothing to prove, as if she did everything already. Even though she can see the outcome and play it out, you have to understand your design so that you can be happy, so that you can live at peace, no satisfaction, have fun, no success, instead of anger, frustration, bitterness, and all those other things that you don't want to experience. And you're getting resistance from life because you're not operating in your design within your chart. You're being conditioned. You're not operating within your truth and your authenticity. You're being conditioned. You're being told what to do, that you should be going like this all the time, that you should think like this. Everybody is different. You have different energy channels that are naturally flowing through you. You have different energy centers that are defined or open. You have a different mindset. You experience spirit different. You experience energy different. You experience life differently. And you have to be okay with that. And that's a part of the transformational process. So peace and love. I hope something that I said today inspired you on your process and on your journey. And this transparency that I be doing, it's not just telling y'all my business, but actually assisting you in your process. Because sometimes that's needed to know that you're not alone. And when it's not easy, that's okay. Just keep going. All right? Peace and love. We're going to continue this. We're still in layer 2, okay? Girl in a woman's world, boy in a man's world, you're going to feel like kings, queens, goddesses, and gods at the end of this transformational journey. Or at least have some type of tips on how to start that process. All right? Peace.